Sky News can reveal tonight that two-thirds of asylum seekers refused residence in Britain over a decade ago are still living inside this country. We've uncovered 11 years of data showing the Home Office's repeated failure to remove failed applicants, with even those who've committed multiple crimes being allowed to remain within UK borders. Sky's Lisa Holland has this special report.
Rajasuriya Ramanatha has been in Britain for 17 years. He was allowed to stay in the country after admitting drink driving. The 39-year-old then continued to offend, with a total of 19 convictions over a 10-year period, including sexual assault and battery.
I couldn't control myself, sometimes like my head is just blown up, like past memories and like dreams and nightmares.
Raj is from Sri Lanka, where he says he was tortured and that affected his mental health. He claims his life would be in danger if he returned. A year ago, he was given a deportation order by the Home Office. Since then, he's managed to stay in the UK, living illegally. Even so, Britain is still paying for psychiatric care for him. Do you think Britain has been generous to you?
Yes.
Do you think the Home Office has treated you well?
They have treated me well, but I spoiled myself because of my medical condition,
This Somali man who didn't want to be identified has been in Britain for over 20 years. He was convicted of grievous bodily harm, but after serving his sentence says he was kept in prison because the Home Office couldn't decide what to do with him. He's now out on bail. Even he doesn't understand why he hasn't been deported.
Obviously, they did put in a deportation order, which I did not understand why I did not go ahead. I'm out now. I was in prison for almost 6 months over my time, but now I'm out. So, it doesn't make sense to me. You're telling me on paper that I'm going to abscond, but you're giving me bail.
The Home Office says the number of foreign criminals being removed from the UK is increasing. But looking at 11 years of data, we found the percentage of people who fail to leave the country after being refused asylum is consistently high. Of the asylum applicants from 2004 who were refused permission to stay in the UK, 65% are officially still in the country. Of those who arrived in 2010, which saw the highest number of people leaving, the figure for those still here was 52%. Of those who claimed asylum in 2014, 62% of failed applicants remain in Britain. At this immigration centre in West London, it seems like an orderly process for those seeking asylum and fighting deportation. But in reality, we found applicants complaining of lengthy delays, with some saying they've been stuck in the system so long it's impossible to go back to the country where they were born.
I don't think the Home Office, their policy is effective at all. As you can see, there's always people coming here. There's no end in what seems to go on with their case. I don't see the Home Office winning. Even with a case like mine, I feel like I've got a good chance, so that's why I'm stringing it out.
It's clear the asylum system is mired in frustration and delays. But being told Britain doesn't welcome you doesn't necessarily mean you can't make it your home. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Well, let's speak now to Tony Smith, the former Director General of UK Border Force. Good evening to you, Tony Smith. You heard it there in that report from Lisa Holland, one of the interviewees saying, it doesn't make sense to me. Why am I still here? Why are these people still here years after they should have been deported?
Well, I think the first point to make is there's nothing in the Home Office rules or in the Border Agency to stop people from leaving the country. That's entirely a matter for them. So those people that are still in the system could, if they wanted to, in my view, report to the Home Office, say they want to go back. There are voluntary departure schemes available. They need to get a passport because we can't remove people without passports. But I think it's a bit of a myth to say that they're still here because we're forcing them to stay.
But what about those who want to stay, but we don't want them to stay?
Well, that's a different matter, isn't it? And that's really a question of considering the application. So asylum applications are hugely difficult, you know. It's a hugely difficult policy area in Whitehall. Immigration's difficult enough, but asylum's even harder, and asylum removals are probably the hardest of all.
But does it take a decade?
It shouldn't take a decade, provided that everybody is compliant with the process, everybody accepts the decisions that are made. So if 2 months go by and the Home Office have looked at your case and determined that actually we're not satisfied that you qualify for asylum, you've said you're from Somalia, we don't believe you, we think you're from Kenya actually, we're going to refuse this, and you can go off and appeal and try and present your case to an appellate authority, then you can put in further representations, then you may develop a relationship with somebody in this country, or you may disappear, or you may produce fresh representation. So there's this perpetual, ongoing process, and of course only recently have we had exit checks in this country. So when we hired a private company to try and find some of these people, they found a third of them had left the country. But we didn't know that, nobody told us that. And so it's a hugely difficult process to actually get somebody from the point of refusal to the point of removal.
What's the solution then?
The solution really is to reduce intake. And I was around when we had the Tipping the Balance initiative. I don't know if you remember that, under Tony Blair's government, but that was where we were trying to stop, fewer asylum seekers coming into the country than those that were being removed. It was called Tipping the Balance. And essentially we did manage to do that, but that's essentially because we tightened up our border controls. We moved into Calais and we stopped the numbers coming in. And that meant that the department was able to cope broadly with the throughput of applications. And we did get ourselves in a hell of a pickle earlier on, in 2002, 2003, before we went to France, when we had 84,000 applications, and some of those are still in the system.
So having those border checks at Calais, you say, is crucial. David Cameron has warned that if we leave the EU, we may lose that arrangement with France. We may no longer be able to have the border checks in Calais. We may find migrant camps being set up along the Kent coast. What would that mean?
Well, that's what happened in 2002 when before we went to Calais. I was around in the immigration service in those days, and there were people camping on the beaches. There was huge pressure on Kent Social Services because we weren't able to stop people coming through from Calais, and so it's an imperative, in my view, that we do stay in Calais. What I'm not so sure about is what the French position would be whether or not we're in the EU. I mean, that is a bilateral agreement between the British and the French authorities. There's similar agreements around the world. For example, the US have got one with Canada where they juxtapose their controls, and we could still do that technically, whether or not we're in the EU. So I'm not sure how much of a threat that is, but strategically, Calais is hugely important to us, yes.
Tony Smith, thank you very much.